Next, item B, please.
Item 6B, adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with Golden State Fire Apparatus for the purchase of 2 Type 1 1500 GPM pumpers, including equipment installation and customization, and an amount not to exceed $1,583,776.32. Execute the necessary documents to enter into a lease purchase arrangement for the pumpers with the California Community Statewide Development Authorities, and add funds to the 2021-22 fiscal year budget to complete the lease purchase.
Thank you. Fire Chief Delay.
Did you guys hear that?
Looks like we were.
You were offline, so I was hoping that you just didn't think the picture was going to do it for itself. So yes, but we hear you now.
Okay, so Javon, Building City Manager, our Fire Chief Ari DeLay will give this presentation. Ordinarily, we do not do this in-depth of a presentation for purchasing equipment, but there are 2 fire engines of a price of nearly $1.6 million, and so I've asked the Fire Chief to give the City Council a full overview of why we're endeavoring with this purchase. So with that, I'll turn it over to the Fire Chief.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the Council. Ari DeLay, your Fire Chief. I'm here this evening to make a presentation to the City Council on the purchase of 2 Type 1 fire engines. Next slide. Our objective this evening is to provide an overview of our fire department's vehicle fleet, and for the council to receive a presentation on the apparatus lease purchase request for these 2 fire engines. Next slide. Our agenda is to provide an overview of our current fleet, review our current apparatus due for replacement, describe the elements that we use to determine apparatus replacement and that schedule, to review the replacement options that we consider, and to review the lease obligation that we currently have and the timing of a proposed new lease obligation. And then review tonight's actions and then take any questions that the council may have. Just to provide a brief overview of the vehicle types that we utilize in the fire department. This seems very basic, but it's kind of an interesting element. We have our fire engines, which are really the workhorse of the fire department and does 80% of the day-to-day work of the fire department. On the right of the screen, you'll see our fire truck. That's our 100-foot aerial ladder truck that we use in the fire department. Our fire engines are really, again, that workhorse of the fire department. They are the primary resources used to carry water, pump that water, carry hose, ladders, the crew and the tools and equipment to be able to suppress fires and run medical emergencies and vehicle accidents. In the city of San Bruno, we have 2 of those frontline apparatus, which I also noted there, that are what we call ALS or advanced life support, meaning at least 1 paramedic is aboard each one of those apparatus. Those fire trucks are the primary resource that we use to ventilate buildings. They have the large ladder on top that allows access to the roof, and a large complement of ground ladders that we use to be able to rescue people and get to the various levels of buildings. They carry blowers to remove smoke from buildings. And the ladder trucks are the primary resource that we use to search buildings in fires. They carry specialized equipment to see through smoke to rescue victims, and carry tools and equipment to force entry to buildings. And they're, again, the primary resource. They carry a lot of the tools we use to rescue trapped occupants of vehicle accidents. And that primary first out unit is Truck 51. And again, that is ALS or Advanced Life Support. So it has at least 1 paramedic on board that unit as well. And then we have various fleet of SUVs and pickup trucks. Chief 16, myself, we have a battalion vehicle, prevention, and 2 prevention vehicles, which are our SUVs, and the city also has in its fleet for the fire department a small utility pickup truck. that we use to support incidents. The next slide here is basically a brief review of our status of our fleet. It goes over the years of the vehicles and the mileage associated with it, each one of those respective vehicles, and you'll see the two highlighted vehicles are engine 151 and 152. The one designator in front of each one of those vehicles designates that those are reserve engines. And as you know, both of those engines are over 20 years old in the fleet and are due for replacement, according to our vehicle replacement plan. So how do we determine the apparatus and its life cycle? We have industry standard, NFPA 1901 is the industry standard that guides how we replace vehicles. And although NFPA 1901 doesn't say exactly how many years a vehicle should be in place, it talks about age and condition and use of those vehicles that are unique to each agency and their specific jurisdiction, their call volume, and things like that. So our recommendation based on all those factors is a 20-year life cycle for these vehicles. The first of the two vehicles slated for replacement would be engine 151. This is a 2001 Type 1 engine. And again, these are the workhorses of our fleet. And you can see this vehicle, if it was a passenger vehicle, 112,000 miles would be a decent amount of mileage, but not completely crazy. But for a fire truck, that's quite a few miles on it. These, again, are the day-to-day tools that provide the service that we deliver to the public. And the second vehicle here is engine 152. It's a 2000 pumper, and it's about 141,000 miles on this vehicle currently. So I talked a little bit earlier about how vehicle replacement is decided. They're evaluated by their age, mileage, operating hours. And a fire truck is different than a lot of types of vehicles because typically in a vehicle you drive it from place to place, and those are the hours that are operated on the vehicle. Where a fire truck is often ran at emergency scenes for a long period of time, so we track engine hours as well as overall mileage. And then the overall physical condition of the vehicle, its maintenance history, and also opportunities to improve our fleet and enhance our effectiveness. And again, just highlight that both of these vehicles are over 20 years old. And San Bruno is historically had engine 51 here at Central Station is one of the top 3 busiest engines in San Mateo County. The fire department runs typically between 4,500 and 5,000 calls per year, and are some of the busiest engines in San Mateo County. So that really plays into the vehicle replacement cycle and how soon we would place an engine from frontline service to reserve status. I provided a chart. One important thing to note is you notice a significant decrease right there at 2020 or 2019 to 2020, and that's our COVID status in our community. So we had a significant decrease in call volume with COVID, but you notice the overall trend, and our next slide will show you the trend line for our apparatus, and the trend line is for our apparatus is a linear forecast of our call volume, and you see engine 51 on the top right corner of the screen is our most productive vehicle and has the most runs. So these things are really workhorses again for the fire department and provide a lot of important services to our community. If I can go to the next slide. So we looked at and evaluated the circumstances we're in currently and looked at a bunch of different options for vehicle replacement. So we looked at refurbishment. We gave vendors that do refurbishment for fire trucks pictures of our apparatus, talked about the improvements that we would want to make to refurbish the vehicle to kind of, refresh the engine, the drivetrain, electrical components. And the estimate were around $500,000 to $600,000 to refurbish the apparatus. So in the whole scheme of things, if you think about it, you're going to take a piece of equipment that's about $750,000, $780,000. So you're going to spend $600,000 on it, and in the end, you still have a 20-year-old fire truck, and the bones of it are still that older vehicle. You've made some improvements, but that's still the facts of the situation. We looked at used vehicles. We evaluated the possibility of purchasing an engine that in the neighborhood of age and years of service that would replace some of these vehicles and still have a usable life left in it. The problem with that circumstance is those vehicles are typically sold as is and with no warranties. And if you do purchase a warranty, they can be quite expensive. And the cost of a vehicle in that age genre that would allow us to continue to operate would be around the $400,000 mark. And then the third option was a new vehicle. A new vehicle is custom built for our needs for the city of San Bruno. One of the components that we insured was included in the bid process for us was a 5-year bumper-to-bumper warranty, which is something that's an important component of long-term success of the fleet. And the estimated cost of the vehicle replacement is around $780,000 per unit. Let's see here. Excuse me, just one moment. To develop the specification we came up for the recommendation of a new vehicle, we established an apparatus committee. They used a long, approximately 6-month process to review the manufacturers, select a make and model of unit that would be sufficient for our work here in the city of San Bruno. And we worked with a vendor to create a complete specification. And I wanted to make sure I paid special recognition to Battalion Chief Mike Koo, who chaired our committee for apparatus, Captain Tyler Charles, firefighters Travis Reed, Nate Mendoza, and Brian Hewitt. So that apparatus committee walked through the entire process, if I can go to the next slide, to determine that specification and deliver a bid package with the vendor. We have obviously purchasing requirements here within the city. To meet those purchasing requirements, we utilized a tool called HGAC Buy. HGAC Buy is a purchasing cooperative that meets the requirements for competitive bidding. And then working with our finance department, they chose Lease as the program for a lease purchase option. If I can go to the next slide. Okay, so currently we have 2 vehicles that are under a lease purchase agreement. That lease purchase agreement obligation ends in October of 21. The value of that lease obligation was $1.873 million. And the idea here is what we're attempting to do is retire that lease obligation that we currently have in October. And this lease obligation, as a fire truck, is about a 12 to 14 month process to get built. This lease obligation would pick up after that sunsetted and those vehicles were paid off and we own them outright. So this new lease obligation would be approximately $1.6 million. And with that, our recommendation, based on the evaluation and the factors that we had before us in the apparatus committee, was to choose the route to do a new purchase for vehicles under a lease purchase agreement. And our recommendation for the council is adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with Golden State. And with that, that's the end of my presentation. I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chief, for the detailed report. Also, thank you to the selection committee and the team for taking a look at the various options. Questions from colleagues? Okay, wow. All right. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Councilmember Salazar, your hand is up. I apologize.
I think Marty was actually first, so I'll let him go.
Okay.
Sure.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. Interesting. These pieces of equipment that are so important that nobody knows how important they are until you actually need one, right? Until there's actually a fire and how reliable they need to be. So we have the miles now. Can you give us any information on like the maintenance? Like these are getting more expensive to operate. It's maybe you can give us a little bit of background on that, just to fill in a little bit to make sure that we're doing the right thing.
Sure. So the maintenance on some of these older vehicles has become more costly. We've done some significant maintenance projects on these apparatus in the last few years. And the idea is you kind of get to this breakover point where the maintenance becomes too problematic, and it's more cost effective actually to purchase a new. And both of these vehicles are kind of at that age where they're starting to have all those signs of wear and starting to have significant problems. And the problem with a fire truck is, when you do have a catastrophic problem, they're in the $40,000, $50,000 catastrophic problem ranges to replace an engine or a transmission and those things. So we're really attempting to put good money after good and not, good money after bad.
Councilmember Medina, in addition, just to piggyback off that, I think today is a great example. Because what we're really talking about is replacing our 2 reserve engines, that the new engines will become frontline engines. And today is a great example where we have a fire truck that has been deployed to help San Mateo County in the potential mudslides. And so we had to make a decision. Do we send our firefighters out in a critical incident in a 20-year-old vehicle, or do we keep that 20-year-old vehicle here to run calls? And the decision was to send our firefighters that are going out in some of the tough conditions in our best vehicle. And so what's serving San Bruno now is a 20-year-old vehicle because that's out on deployment. And that same situation happened earlier this year when we had the fires. And we decided to send the newest engine out with our firefighters that were fighting wildfires. And we were left with a 20-year-old vehicle here to serve the community. And so we're having to make these tough calls. And that's one of the reasons why we're bringing this before you, because we really need to get to a situation where we keep our vehicles for 20 years, but 10 years on the front line, 10 years on the back end, and we have a regular replacement cycle.
Got it. Thank you.
Councilmember Salazar.
Thank you. My concerns were along the same lines, and I do support the methodology here for the rotation and having a set timeline and planning ahead and having the budget in place to replace the engines, which was something we haven't done before, and I think it's definitely necessary. But along the lines of maintenance, I know that a lot of the engine maintenance is done, or it used to be, I know, done in-house. We had some expertise in-house to work on the engines, and looking through the description of the new vehicles, I noticed there was a lot of electronics incorporated into them, Linux operating system based display systems. And so I'm wondering, what does that do to our total cost of ownership when the vehicles become that much more complicated? Are we then going to incur more expensive annual maintenance or regular maintenance? And then in terms of obsolescence, 20 years might seem, okay for, the mechanical structure of the vehicle, but are those electronics going to be completely obsolete in 5 years and then not really worth it? And then can we swap those out? Is there some opportunity to upgrade those along the way as things get better?
Fire Chief, you're on mute.
We're missing the answer.
Councilmember Salazar, a fantastic question. We are extremely fortunate here in the city of San Bruno with our fire department. We have shift mechanics that work on shift and take care of the lion's share of problems with our fleet. They are an extremely technologically savvy group. They have code readers that read the computers that we have on board of our apparatus currently, and they're well versed in it. Pierce Manufacturing, the manufacturer that was selected for this bid process, has a pretty advanced training program that they'll be able to put our folks through. And like you said, as far as the technology goes, these vehicles have some pretty advanced technology. One of the features is the vehicle has what they call prognostics. and it basically preempts you to provide that routine maintenance that's due and ready for the vehicle. So it really gives you a heads up for it. And you see a lot of the modern vehicles are that way, where you have an app that tells you when to change the oil and when to take some preventative maintenance steps. These vehicles have those same components in them. They also have Wi-Fi, and they're also what they call multiplexed, which means the electronic system can be diagnosed in a really quick and efficient manner without really digging through the wires and doing some really advanced stuff. Another really important piece I wanted to share with the council is a lot of these modern fire trucks, and these ones specifically, have a system called HOS alerts. And that system is where the fire truck goes down the road, and once you turn the code 3 lights on, it is able to notify folks that are using the Waze application on their phones to be able to navigate, and it tells them to pull over because you have a fire truck coming behind you. So some really important components like that. And we have a very qualified group of shift mechanics led by Battalion Chief Mike Koo, who's in charge of our fleet. And I'm very confident that they have the skills and abilities to be able to do the day-to-day maintenance and repairs of the vehicles.
And we do send out for that.
Yeah, we do send our vehicles out for major repairs that are outside of the capabilities here within the city. But those day-to-day costs, and honestly, the total cost of vehicles is actually the out-of-service time. And of us having those in-house people to be able to do those day-to-day repairs, we don't have to send it across the bay, or a lot of times now it's the Sacramento Valley or San Joaquin Valley where vehicles are sent for maintenance and repair. We're able to do that stuff in-house without the travel time and the overtime costs associated with those maintenance and repairs.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Hi. So I had the pleasure of meeting with Chief DeLay this week as part of my onboarding. So I know. So I'm going to ask a question I know the answer to, but I think it's important information for the rest of the council and for the public to hear. And Chief, you had told me when we were talking about how Engine 51, the real workhorse that does the most number of calls, it ends up with way more miles on it than Engine 52, which it doesn't go out on as many calls. And you talked about how to be able to rather than actually paint the numbers directly on the trucks, to be able to swap between them to spread the miles out. Is that can you elaborate on that a little bit for the public?
Sure, Councilmember Hamilton. So one of the strategies that I'm going to implement with our fleet, working with Chief Koo, is to be able to provide some balanced mileage. You look at the two vehicles that we're replacing; they're not equally balanced as far as mileage. So we have the opportunity. We're going to design in placarding on those vehicles, where we can take out the placards, switch them out amongst vehicles, and move Engine 52, which has less miles on it, down to 51, and to balance those miles to be able to get the most money out of the value of our vehicles while we have them, to maintain a standardized mileage within our fleet. So that's one of the strategies moving forward for our fleet.
Thank you, Chief.
A couple questions for me is, first, just for folks' knowledge too, is that Central, there's also a mechanic facility there that has been utilized before, and that was trying to use more county type resources. But also, as was indicated by the chief, we do have some talented folks that are able to do some stuff in-house, which saves time, money, etc. So that is a positive to have that again. The other thing is, going down, obviously we know that these aren't cheap, and we know why. But when I was, and I asked the manager, and I'd like to see maybe this talked about at time of budget, is we have a equipment reserve fund, but obviously we know we can't fund everything. But when we do get deployed to the fires and what have you, and we get reimbursed, there's for the staff time, which comes back to the city, but there's also for the, shall we say, wear and tear of the vehicle on why it's being dispatched. But those reimbursements, once they're provided back to the city, could they be put in a separate account that specifically goes toward cost to replenish the fire vehicles, so that we have these monies, whether it's 100, 200, 300,000 that we may get in a high season, and I'm not sure what it may be, but they could be allocated back toward just trying to keep up so that our equipment reserve is at a good maintained level.
Yes, Mayor, that is possible, and we can ensure that we track those costs and when we receive the CAL FIRE reimbursements, take the reimbursable amounts for equipment and vehicles and set those aside separately so they're not commingled with other general fund reimbursements.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Mason.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that I met with Chief DeLay when I first got elected, and he told me he needs new vehicles. So this is not new. He explained to me how the vehicles work, how a lot of the upkeep on the existing vehicles has been really done by the existing firefighters that are in-house. And so I just have a note here that I think that the need for reliable vehicles for our firefighters that are also oftentimes paramedics really is a priority. And while we're in some tough times, I have absolutely no reservation approving and supporting this resolution tonight. Thank you.
Councilor Vice Mayor, I apologize.
It's all good. I couldn't find it very easily. What was the interest rate on this lease?
Okay, sure. So, so the timing for this, basically what we're seeking is approval from the council to execute a contract. The lease purchase would not take place until the vehicle is delivered, which is probably January, February, March of 2022. So it would be executed at that time when those lease arrangements are made by the finance department.
Do we have a projected number?
The current lease purchase, I believe it's approximately 1.9% for the lease purchase, and I believe Cal Lease has a similar rates.
Yeah, Councilmember, I'm actually looking through the documents.
That's helpful. Thank you.
To see the current lease rate. I'm not finding it at this moment. It will certainly be different when we actually go out to lease and be purchasing the trucks through the lease financing. It's also worth mentioning that this is not a budgetary challenge because we currently have in our operating budget payment of the lease payments for the prior vehicles we purchased, and there'll actually be a savings for a number of months between when we retire the payment for the current vehicles and the payment for the new vehicles come on board. And so budgetarily in our annual budget next year, there'll be a savings. But unfortunately, I can't quote you the current lease rate or what it will be when we enter into the lease purchase agreement.
I appreciate that. I'm just curious, and round two is pretty good. So, thank you.
Yeah, and then finally, I want to compliment, because I think when we purchased the engine and the truck prior, by the collaboration, I think it was at that point Chief Kennedy that worked on that. It was, I think, as they worked it out, it was close to about an $80,000 savings by the way it was purchased and by doing them together. And so by, again, I think bringing the team together and having everybody look into this, I think obviously it was successful then and it's successful now. And so I want to thank that same strategy, because I think it's the best served for the firefighters and for the community. So thank you. With that, this is I don't see any council member, I apologize, any public members with their hands up. So this is a resolution requesting. So is there any action by council?
I motion.
Hamilton, Mason, and roll call.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Aye.
Councilmember Mason?
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Marty Medina?
Aye.
And Mayor Rico Medina?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.